The Nationals looking to crack down on those on job seeker benefits if the party gets voted in at next month's election. The party's new policy would introduce more sanctions for those who persistently do not meet their benefit obligations. To tell us why this is important to get more people into work, we're joined by the New Zealand Initiative's Oliver Hartwich. Morena, Oliver, thank you so much for being with us this morning. You like this policy, why?
Because I think it is important to get people straight back into the labour market, back into work as soon as possible, because we know from experience, from research, that once you're out of the labour market for a longer period of time, you really damage yourself, you damage your future employment prospects, and therefore it is important, it is the best thing actually to do to get people, once they're unemployed, back into work.
I guess the big question about this, though, is how is this policy different to what is already in place? We know that what's in place at the moment is three types of sanctions. They go from graduated, which is a percentage reduction in benefit amounts, and then on to suspended, and then on to a cancelled benefit. So how is what National is proposing different to what's in place?
I think it's a bit different because it makes it simpler. It actually signals quite clearly to beneficiaries actually what state they're currently in. So they are introducing a traffic light system where basically once you're on green, everything is fine. You might get a warning and then you reach the red stage where you're really in trouble. So I think just making that very clear to beneficiaries is of benefit. The other thing that's probably going to be different is actually the enforcement, because when you look at the statistics of sanctions over the last few years, you can see that there was a massive drop in sanctions being imposed on beneficiaries in the last few years, and therefore I think that's a change in policy.
Why were there less sanctions imposed?
I think it is a political decision, actually, whether you want to be tough on beneficiaries or whether you just let things pass. And I think this current government actually didn't put enough emphasis on really putting sanctions in place to get people back into the labour market. They were happy with a slightly higher number of beneficiaries.
So in terms of these sanctions, then, you talk about it making it easier for people on a job seeker benefit to understand the sanctions. How do we know this? How do we know that that's going to work?
Well, I think you can make it very clear, actually, with the traffic light system, what kind of state you're in. And then, of course, you have to follow up on that. It's not good enough to just signal that you're going to be tough and that you're facing sanctions. You actually have to do this as well. I think this is where one of the areas in which the current government actually didn't follow through. But I think what is also important is to realize that this is not just about sanctions. This is not just about saving taxpayer money. It is actually trying to help people, because we want to see them in gainful employment, because we know this is good. It is good for their employment prospects, it's good for their health, it is good for their mental health, and we want to see these people succeed. So this is really part of two sides of a coin. On the one hand, you want to hassle people who are not actually accepting job offers, and on the other hand, you really want to help them. You want to do everything you can to get them work ready, to get them into the labour market, and to actually lead them onto a different path.
So then, I want to go back to what the drivers are of benefit dependency, because this is what the policy is all about, is making sure that people aren't dependent on that benefit. So do you know what the main drivers are then for benefit dependency?
Well, obviously, some people have problems with substance abuse. Some people have problems coming from a background where they didn't get the right kind of education. Some people might have problems with illiteracy. So actually, we have to do everything we can to help them. And that was the approach of the past government. That was the social investment approach, where you actually look at the conditions, the family conditions, the education conditions of the beneficiaries, trying to figure out what can be done to help them. Because whatever you do upfront to get them work ready, to actually give them the education that they need to succeed in life, will actually pay off for them personally in later life.
You talk about mental health, you know, that being in a job is actually good for your mental health. If we break down the statistics of who's actually on a job seeker benefit, the majority are male, over 80,000 are European, between the age of 25 and 39, and the causes are actually mental health. So what a National's policy, what it is proposing, again, how do we know that it's going to work?
Well, I can tell you from my own personal experience. Before I studied economics, I worked for more than a year in a daycare center for people with mental disabilities. And work was part of what we did. Actually, to give people a structure in their day, to make sure that they have some employment, that they can actually see the products of their work, was incredibly good for their mental health. When you look at people with mental disabilities, with mental problems, they need structure in their days, and work actually delivers that. And it delivers, of course, an experience of achievement, of fulfillment. And so when I worked in in this daycare center, I could actually see this practically myself, what a positive impact work can have on people.
Oliver, just finally, there is some concern around children of those who are on a job seeker benefit, that if they are cut, what happens to those children if their caregivers are sanctioned under this new policy?
That's a genuine concern, and of course we want to protect the children. National in their proposal actually wants to ensure that beneficiaries can actually have their benefits cut by only 50% if they lose their benefits if they have children. So they take the children into account. They want to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Oliver Hartwich from the New Zealand Initiative, really appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.